Welcome to In Memoriam, the final spotlight. Back in 2005, there's this joke going around about a man who pushes the earth down instead of doing a push-up.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, it was meant to be completely absurd. But if you look closely at the life of the man behind that joke, the reality wasn't actually all that far off.
No, it really wasn't.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to explore the remarkable life, the career, and the enduring legacy of Carlos Ray Chuck Norris. And it is with profound empathy that we acknowledge his recent passing.
Yeah, on March 19th, 2026.
Right. At the age of 86, he was in Kauai, Hawaii, and he suffered a medical emergency, but he was able to spend his final moments peacefully, surrounded by his beloved family.
Which is, a very gentle end to such a massive, high-impact life.
Yeah.
Because the cultural footprint he leaves behind is just staggering when you try to take it all in at once.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, we are looking at a 6-time, undefeated, world professional middleweight karate champion, an action movie star who fundamentally reshaped the mechanics of American cinema, a quietly relentless philanthropist, and ultimately a mythical internet icon.
Yeah, he occupied a completely unique space.
Exactly. He meant drastically different things to different generations of fans.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to fully grasp the weight of his legacy, you have to look at the stark contrast between the invincible superhero the world saw, the guy who could supposedly slam a revolving door, and the deeply vulnerable origins he came from.
Right.
To understand the man who became the ultimate symbol of American toughness, we really have to start with the boy who was the exact opposite of all that.
We really do. So he was born Carlos Ray Norris on March 10th, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma. And the childhood he navigated was, it was exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, our sources detail some really tough circumstances.
Very tough. He grew up in severe poverty, and his father was an alcoholic. He would go on these sprawling, months-long drinking binges.
Wow, months at a time.
Yeah. And that left the family constantly teetering on the edge of financial and emotional ruin. When you read his own reflections on this time, he described himself as a shy, non-athletic kid with debilitating introversion.
Which is just so hard to picture.
I know. But the embarrassment of his family's struggles essentially forced him to shrink inward, just, hiding from the world.
Which is a profound paradox for you, the listener, to wrap your head around. I mean, the guy who would later stare down Bruce Lee on camera couldn't even look people in the eye as a child.
Exactly.
So the turning point, looking through our research today, arrives in 1958. Right after high school, he joins the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, and he gets stationed at Osan Air Base in South Korea.
Right, as an air policeman. And it's there that a fellow airman gives him the nickname Chuck. But far more importantly, it's where he discovers Tang Soo Do.
That was the catalyst.
Yeah.
Right.
And I like to think of this as him discovering a completely new language. For a painfully shy kid who literally doesn't know how to assert his place in the world, martial arts became his vocabulary.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Physical discipline became his voice.
That framing captures the psychology perfectly, honestly. Because Tang Soo Do isn't just about throwing a punch. It's a traditional Korean martial art that heavily emphasizes flowing, rigorous striking, particularly high kicks.
Right.
And it demands an intense, almost meditative mental focus. It requires you to synchronize your mind and body completely. And he just poured himself into that discipline, training 5 hours a day.
5 hours a day? That is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever tried to force yourself to go to the gym just once a week, imagine the sheer willpower required to train for 5 hours a day, every single day, just to overcome your own internal limitations.
It's unbelievable.
By the time he was discharged in August of 1962, that shy boy from Oklahoma was gone.
But the path to becoming a champion wasn't an overnight fairy tale. I mean, he applies to be a police officer in California, and while he's waiting on the hiring list, he opens a martial arts studio to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he actually loses his first few tournaments.
He took some serious beatings early on. But here is where we see the mechanics of his perseverance kick in. Instead of retreating into his shell like he would have as a child.
Right, giving up.
Exactly. He analyzed those losses. He adapted his technique, blending different styles to make himself unpredictable. He used the structure of martial arts to build absolute, unbreakable self-confidence, rep by rep.
He turned it into a science.
He really did. And that analytical approach to fighting paid off. By 1968, he won the professional middleweight karate champion title.
And he held on to it for a long time.
6 consecutive years. He held that title undefeated until he retired from competition.
So while he's dominating the tournament circuit, those California studios he opens start exploding in popularity. He attracts an elite celebrity clientele.
Huge names.
Yeah, people like Bob Barker, the Osmonds, Priscilla Presley, and the legendary actor Steve McQueen.
Which is a crazy roster.
Right. And it's McQueen who eventually pulls Chuck aside and suggests he try acting. But wait, I have to push back a little here.
Okay, sure.
Because a lot of guys were doing martial arts in the 1970s, and plenty of them were trying to get into movies. So what specifically made his style the one that, as you mentioned earlier, reshaped American cinema?
Well, it comes down to translating the violent, unpredictable physics of a real tournament into a camera frame.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Before Chuck Norris, American movie fights were often highly stylized. They looked like choreographed dances, you know. Actors were throwing wide, theatrical punches that wouldn't actually land in reality.
Right. Very dramatic, but not realistic.
Exactly. But Chuck brought a terrifying authenticity. His absolute control over his kinetic energy, the speed of his strikes, the way his body absorbed impact, it was real. He knew how human bodies actually move and break in a fight.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and that raw physical honesty is exactly what caught the eye of Bruce Lee.
And that translation of physics leads directly to 1972, the ultimate breakthrough, the film The Way of the Dragon, where he plays Bruce Lee's nemesis.
What's fascinating here is the climax of that film, the fight scene in the Colosseum in Rome. It remains a watershed moment for martial arts cinema.
It's iconic.
It really is. Lee and Norris blended the raw, seesaw momentum of real tournament fighters with Hollywood cinematography. You are watching two legitimate masters communicate through combat.
Yeah, it feels so different from anything else at the time.
And crucially, the fight ends in a gesture of genuine respect, with Lee's character laying his guise and belt over Chuck's defeated character. That single scene cemented Chuck's credibility worldwide.
Because it wasn't just acting.
Right. It proved he wasn't just a tough guy. He was a martial artist worthy of the dragon's respect.
And that launched his action stardom in a way the United States hadn't seen before. Because up until that point, martial arts stars were largely imported from overseas.
True.
Chuck Norris became the first successful homegrown American martial arts star. He headlines Breaker in 1977, and then Good Guys Wear Black in 1978, which becomes a massive hit.
Huge hit.
Yeah, and he brought a distinctly American setting, often rural, working-class environments, to a genre that had previously relied on mystical or foreign tropes. And that homegrown appeal sets the stage perfectly for his legendary Cannon Films era in the 1980s.
Yeah, and to understand that era, you really have to understand what Cannon Films represented. They were an independent renegade studio known for low-budget, high-octane action movies.
Very high octane.
Oh, yeah. And they tapped directly into the psyche of 1980s America. The country was still processing the trauma and unresolved feelings of the Vietnam War. Audiences were hungry for heroes who could go back into impossible situations and win.
And Chuck provided that catharsis.
Exactly.
And that context makes his work in Missing in Action so much heavier.
It really does.
Because he dedicated that specific film to his younger brother, Wieland, who was killed in the Vietnam War. That wasn't just a Hollywood plot for him to sell tickets. That was a deeply personal processing of grief on a global stage.
Yeah, his personal ethos was always driving his career choices. I mean, jump to 1993, he transitions from blockbuster movies to television with Walker, Texas Ranger.
A total classic.
Right. The show ran until 2001 and completely solidified his cultural persona. Cordell Walker was a moral, crime-fighting lawman who always stood up for the underdog. The show didn't just rely on roundhouse kicks, though it had plenty of those.
Definitely.
It relied on a very clear, uncompromising sense of right and wrong. The cultural impact was so profound that he was later named an honorary Texas Ranger and an honorary U.S. Marine.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Usually, a classic action star ages out of the spotlight, maybe does a few nostalgic cameos, and fades into the background.
Right, that's the standard trajectory.
But in 2005, the internet gets a hold of him. The Chuck Norris fax meme is born, and these were just absurd, hyperbolic jokes elevating him to a godlike status.
Oh, I love those.
Things like, Chuck Norris had a staring contest with the sun and won, or Chuck Norris can hear sign language. It turned an aging television star into a massive global digital phenomenon.
And the psychology behind why that meme worked is brilliant. The internet thrives on irony, but it also craves a universally agreed-upon anchor. And Chuck Norris became the internet's anchor for invincibility.
Yeah, he really did.
And rather than being offended or confused by this new generation making jokes at his expense, he recognized the business and cultural potential. He leaned into it entirely.
He totally embraced it.
He published his own fact books, he starred in self-aware commercials for T-Mobile, and he delivered that legendary World of Warcraft ad. By letting the world in on the joke, he maintained agency over his own mythos.
But balancing that digital mythos with actual human reality requires serious grounding. While the internet painted him as this untouchable deity, his real life was profoundly rooted in humanity, faith, and service.
Absolutely. If you asked him what his proudest accomplishment was, he wouldn't say the internet fame, and he wouldn't even say Walker, Texas Ranger. He would point directly to Kickstart Kids.
Which he founded in 1990, right?
Right, originally as Kick Drugs Out of America. And the mechanism of this program is what makes it so effective. It wasn't just an optional after-school club where kids punch pads. The goal was to integrate martial arts directly into the daily middle school curriculum, replacing standard physical education for at-risk youth.
Why in middle school specifically, though?
Because that is the critical psychological window where gang recruitment is most effective. Gangs offer vulnerable kids a twisted version of belonging, structure, and protection.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so Kickstart intercepted that exact psychological need. It provided kids with a healthy dopamine loop of earned belts, a strict hierarchy of respect, and a safe community. He was giving thousands of children the exact same tool, that new language of physical discipline that saved him from the trauma of his own childhood.
Wow. That mechanism of replacing negative structures with positive discipline really humanizes the legend. And you see that same deeply grounded reality in his devotion to his family. He was a dedicated husband to his wife Gina, a father to 5 children, and a grandfather to 13 grandchildren.
It's a huge family.
Yeah, and he lived by a personal 12-point code of honor. When you read the code, it's not about being the toughest guy in the room or intimidating people. It emphasizes intentionally moving past your mistakes, dedicating yourself to developing your potential, and always looking for the good in other people.
It's surprisingly gentle.
Exactly. It's a remarkably gentle, forgiving philosophy for a man famous for kicking bad guys through plate glass windows.
Well, it is the ultimate philosophy of a true martial artist,
Mm.
strength under absolute control. And he applied that same rigorous control to his own health and wellness, which allowed him to defy the aging process well into his 80s.
What did that look like?
He maintained a relentless daily routine. He was still practicing martial arts and doing intense cardio, but he paired it with daily meditation to cultivate mental acuity and calm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and his diet was incredibly deliberate. He relied on lean proteins like fish and turkey, whole grains, fresh vegetables, and strictly avoided processed foods and refined sugars. He treated his body with profound respect, viewing it as an instrument that required constant maintenance.
We also need to look at the ideological lens through which he viewed the world outside of Hollywood and the dojo, just to present the full picture for you.
Right. Outside of entertainment, his worldview was strictly defined by his Christian faith and his conservative politics. And he didn't just hold these views privately. They were an active part of his public life.
Yeah, the sources note he was very vocal.
Very vocal. He wrote extensive columns for the website WorldNet Daily and was a vocal supporter of various Republican candidates over the decades.
Which we're just stating to how he lived his values.
Exactly. We're just reporting the facts here. These beliefs were deeply ingrained in his identity and served as the foundation for how he navigated his philanthropy, his family life, and his public statements. It was the compass he used to direct his vast influence.
So, all of these elements we've explored today, his rigorous physical discipline, his strategic reinventions, his generosity with at-risk youth, his foundational faith, and his dedication to his family, they all culminated in the final chapter of a truly legendary American life. On March 19th, 2026, he passed away peacefully, surrounded by the family he fiercely protected and loved.
The statement his family released in the wake of his passing really captured the essence of the man behind the myth.
What did they say?
They said, to the world, he was a martial artist, actor, and a symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather. To him, you were not just fans, you were his friends.
That's beautiful.
It really is. They highlighted an unwavering commitment to the people he loved, emphasizing that his quiet kindness left a lasting impact on millions far beyond the movie screens.
So what does this all mean when you, the listener, step back and look at this massive, multifaceted life? How do we sum up the legacy of Chuck Norris?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, his legacy is one of extraordinary duality and adaptation. He wasn't just an actor who learned a few moves to look good on a poster. He was a legitimate 10th-degree black belt who literally founded his own martial arts discipline, the Chuck Norris system,
Which is still taught today.
still practiced and taught by thousands today. He fundamentally changed the trajectory of American action films, proving that an American martial artist could carry a blockbuster franchise on his own shoulders.
Yeah.
And then, he seamlessly transitioned into a multi-generational cultural icon. Your grandparents respected him for the brutal karate circuit. Your parents watched him deliver moral justice on Walker, Texas Ranger, and a younger generation idolized him through digital memes. Very relevant across so many decades, constantly evolving while somehow staying entirely true to their core values.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to ponder. We've talked a lot about the internet jokes claiming Chuck Norris was this invincible, immortal being. But as we move further into an era driven by artificial intelligence and digital archiving, the concept of immortality is changing.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, because future generations will have access to endless AI-generated variations of his memes floating in the digital ether long after the physical evidence of his era fades. It raises a fascinating question. In 100 years, when algorithms blur the line between historical fact and digital fiction, how will humanity separate the man who quietly saved thousands of at-risk kids from the immortal deity the internet created?
Wow.
Perhaps by becoming a myth, he ensured that the values he stood for will never actually be forgotten.
That is a profound intersection of technology and legacy. He built a cultural monument that will easily outlast us all, adapting to whatever medium the future holds.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Chuck Norris. As you go about your day, we invite you to reflect on his journey. Maybe take a little bit of that relentless discipline, that ability to adapt to your circumstances, and that quiet kindness, and find a way to bring it into your own life. Until next time.